Ever wondered about the profound wisdom hidden in the book of Hebrews? This ancient text, nestled within the New Testament, offers an insightful perspective on faith and endurance. Its authorship, while still a topic of debate, is often attributed to Paul, or one of his contemporaries. The book was originally addressed to a group of Jewish Christians, providing them guidance and strength. Its purpose? To emphasize the superiority and humanity of Christ. Delve deeper with us as we unravel the rich tapestry of the book of Hebrews, chapter by chapter. Chapter 1 starts with a bang, declaring the superiority of Jesus Christ. This declaration is far from subtle. It's a profound assertion that Jesus, in his divine nature, is superior to angels. But how does the chapter prove this, you might ask? Well, it illustrates Jesus as God's ultimate revelation, serving as the final and most complete expression of God's will and purpose. The chapter explains that Jesus is not just another angelic messenger, but the Son of God himself. He was appointed heir of all things, through whom the universe was created. His role is not merely delivering a message, but embodying the message, being the radiance of God's glory and the exact representation of his being. This chapter portrays Jesus as the sustainer of all things, the one who sits at the right hand of the Majesty in heaven. Thus, chapter 1 sets the stage by positioning Jesus at the center of the narrative. From the divine, we move to the human aspect of Jesus in chapter 2. This chapter delves into the humanity of Jesus, a critical aspect of his nature that allows us to relate to him on a personal level. His humanity is not a mere facade, but a genuine lived experience. He tasted suffering in all its forms, not as an omnipotent God, but as a vulnerable human being. This suffering was not in vain, but served a divine purpose. Through his suffering, Jesus became the merciful high priest, able to empathize with our weaknesses and intercede on our behalf. He understands our struggles because he has walked in our shoes. His humanity is a bridge that connects us to the divine, making our relationship with God personal and intimate. Chapter 2 of Hebrews paints a picture of Jesus that is both divine and human. It highlights his dual nature, a combination that is both intriguing and comforting. Chapter 2 therefore beautifully juxtaposes the divine and human aspects of Jesus. Chapters 3 and 4 shift focus to the concept of rest. A rest not of physical nature, but a spiritual one offered by Jesus. These chapters beckon believers to enter into this spiritual rest, a state of complete reliance on God, unburdened by the worries of the world. We see parallels to the Israelites' journey to the Promised Land. Just as the Israelites, weary from their journey, found rest in the Promised Land, we too, burdened by the trials of life, find our rest in Jesus. The Promised Land was not merely a physical destination for the Israelites, but a symbol of spiritual rest, a place of divine communion with God. Likewise, our journey, often marred by trials, tribulations, and temptations, leads us to Jesus, our Promised Land. Resting in Jesus means trusting in his promises, surrendering our anxieties, and finding peace in his presence. These chapters remind us of the peace that comes from faith in Jesus. Chapters 5 through 7 introduce a mysterious figure, Melchizedek. This intriguing character, who appears only briefly in the Old Testament, is brought into the spotlight in the book of Hebrews to highlight some profound truths about Jesus Christ. Firstly, let's dive into the concept of priesthood. Melchizedek, the king of Salem, was also a priest of God Most High. This dual role is unique and significant. Just like Melchizedek, Jesus too holds a dual role. He is not only the King of Kings, but also our high priest, mediating between God and humanity. Now, let's delve into the concept of tithing. Abraham gave a tenth of his spoils to Melchizedek, recognizing his priestly authority. This act of tithing, though seemingly simple, carries profound implications. It signifies that Melchizedek's priesthood was greater than the Levitical priesthood, for it existed before the law was given. In the same way, Jesus' priesthood, which is after the order of Melchizedek, supersedes the Levitical priesthood. It's not based on lineage, but on the power of an indestructible life. Lastly, let's focus on Jesus as the eternal high priest. The book of Hebrews makes it clear that Jesus, like Melchizedek, has a priesthood that is unending. This is in contrast to the Levitical priests who served only until their death. Jesus, however, because he continues forever, holds his priesthood permanently. Therefore, he is able to save completely those who come to God through him, since he always lives to intercede for them. So, who is Melchizedek? He's a figure who points us to Jesus, illuminating the depth and breadth of Jesus' work as our high priest. He helps us understand that Jesus' priesthood is superior, eternal, and perfect. Through his priesthood, Jesus bridges the gap between God and humanity, offering us a way to connect with God. In these chapters, we see a deeper exploration of Jesus' role as our high priest. Through Melchizedek, we gain a richer understanding of Jesus' work, his priesthood, and his unending love for us. Next, chapters 8 through 10 present the idea of a new covenant. The term covenant here signifies an agreement or promise between God and his people. This new covenant is contrasted with the old covenant, which was established under the law of Moses. Now, the old covenant was not without its merits. It guided the people of Israel, setting forth rules and procedures that, if followed, would lead to blessings. Yet it was also a burdensome yoke. It demanded perfection, and any deviation from its stipulations led to condemnation. In essence, the Old Covenant highlighted the inherent imperfection of humanity and our inability to attain righteousness through our own efforts. Then enters the New Covenant, manifested in the person of Jesus. Unlike the Old Covenant, the New Covenant is not a set of laws inscribed on stone tablets, but a promise written on the hearts of believers. This promise is founded on the sacrificial work of Jesus, who offered himself as a perfect sacrifice for the sins of humanity. In this act of self-giving love, Jesus fulfilled the requirements of the Old Covenant, taking upon himself the punishment that we deserved. His sacrifice was so complete, so perfect, that it did not need to be repeated. There was no more need for the annual sacrifices that were a staple of the Old Covenant. Jesus' once-and-for-all sacrifice was sufficient to cleanse us from our sins and bring us into a right relationship with God. The implications of this are profound. Under the New Covenant, our relationship with God is not based on our ability to adhere to a set of rules, but on the finished work of Jesus. We are no longer slaves to the law, but children of God, accepted and loved, not because of what we do, but because of what Jesus has done for us. These chapters beautifully illustrate the transformative power of Jesus' sacrifice. Finally, in chapters 11 through 13, we encounter powerful lessons on faith and endurance. Let's delve into these remarkable chapters, shall we? Chapter 11 is often referred to as the Hall of Faith, an extraordinary gallery of faith heroes. It's filled with stories of people who, despite the odds, trusted in the divine. From Noah, who built an ark in a desert, to Abraham, who left his homeland for an unknown destination. Each tale is a testament to the power of faith. These stories serve as reminders that faith is not about seeing but believing, not about understanding but trusting. Moving on to chapter 12, we find a call to endurance. The chapter begins with a vivid metaphor of a race. Just as runners must shed any weight that slows them down, we too must let go of sins that hinder our spiritual progress. The race is long, and the course is challenging, but we are urged to keep our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. As we run this race, we are not alone. We are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses, those faith heroes from chapter 11 cheering us on. Finally, we arrive at chapter 13. Here we find final exhortations or strong encouragements for living a life of faith. We're called to love one another, to show hospitality, to remember those who are suffering, and to honor marriage. We're also reminded that Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. His love and grace are unchanging, and they are our anchor amidst the changing seasons of life. These concluding chapters of Hebrews 11 through 13 offer timeless wisdom on living a life of faith. They remind us that faith is about trust, endurance is about perseverance, and living a life of faith is about love, hospitality, and remembrance. And through it all, we are not alone. We run this race with a great cloud of witnesses, and we are anchored by an unchanging Jesus. These concluding chapters offer timeless wisdom on living a life of faith. To sum up, the book of Hebrews presents a compelling narrative. It begins by emphasizing the superiority of Christ over angels and Moses. It then explores the humanity of Christ and the rest we find in him. The narrative further delves into the comparison between Melchizedek and Jesus before unveiling the new covenant. It concludes by underscoring the importance of faith and endurance. Thus, the book of Hebrews invites us to reflect on the profound truths of our faith, encouraging us to persevere with confidence and hope.